Michigan Wolverines. Kind of funny, right? They are the defending national champs, and they have the fourth best odds to win the Big Ten. Fourth best, behind Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. And some of that's fair because they're 128th in returning production in all of college football. There's only 134 teams. The vibe in Ann Arbor is very, very similar to what it was a season ago. Now, different personnel, obviously, on the roster, different coaches on the staff, different head coach with Sherrone Moore. But you go, check out all the intel over there at the Wolverine, the Michigan on 3 site, and all the guys that do tremendous work over there, from Chris Ballas to Clayton Safey to Anthony Broom. Like, they crush it. The vibe is very similar in the sense that, like, hey, the way that we did things last year that got us that national title trophy, the sentiment and the overall, way that we get down, the overall, heartbeat of this program is still the same thing. Michigan Wolverine fans, have had a ton of y'all join the party recently, and subscribe if you have not yet. Massive year now for the Wolverines. Big year trying to defend the national championship. If you have not yet subscribed, no time like the present. Lock it in. Let's have a tremendous college football season. Michigan, I think, is always dangerous when they got the little chip on their shoulder. We've talked about it a lot. The returning production is one of the first things I said about Michigan during this segment, but I think they're tired of that. I think they're tired of hearing about all that they lost last year, in large part because they still have some really talented dudes still on this roster. And it's hard to blame them if they feel annoyed by that. Like Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland. They got, that's what, 5 NFL draft picks I just named? They're going to be in good shape from a personnel perspective. Now, defensively, they're going to be nasty. Wink Martindale, new DC, I think it'll be a very similar flavor to what you've seen from Michigan defenses over the course of the last few years. The names change. The guy calling the defense changes. I think the approach will stay relatively the same. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Michigan maybe be a touch more aggressive, just because that's kind of the Wink Martindale MO. They will have, I think, the best defensive tackle combo in America. That's not saying a whole lot. The thing with Michigan, and this is something we've said for a while now, is there's going to be some names that come October nationally we're all very familiar with, but right now in August, we never heard of this guy. I was talking to Clayton Safey getting ready for this segment and just kind of picking his brain on different things when it comes to Michigan, and he's dropping names like Jay Sean Barham, transfer from Maryland, linebacker, said he's one of the hardest hitting dudes on the team. It's I wasn't familiar with his game. My apologies. I wasn't really familiar with your game, Jay Sean. He's going to be a dude for him, I think. Zeke Berry, someone where if you watched the Michigan spring game, he was flying all over the place. I think he's going to be a stud for you this year playing safety. The name changes. The identity does not. Offensively, Tyler Morris is expected to be the go-to guy when it comes to targets at wide receiver. If you remember him from that Rose Bowl, he had a nice little catch over the middle from J.J. McCarthy, turned the corner, and it looked like the Alabama defenders had an angle on him, and then he just turned on the Jets. Go watch it on YouTube if you haven't already. He's a guy that probably needs to see the football in some way, shape, or form. He's going to be the go-to guy. Samaj Morgan, also you saw with him a little bit last year. You saw Peyton O'Leary a little bit in that spring game. I expect him to have a good year. The quarterbacks, though, is really what's going to be the major talking point when you unpack what's going on at Michigan. And I'll say this. After the spring, even though we saw mostly the Davis Warren, Alex Orji back and forth, the Jack Tuttle train, yes, the Jack Tuttle train now was rolling during the summer. There was a point in time where there was some buzz around hey, Jack Tuttle looks like the guy right now at Michigan. Unfortunately for him, been a little bit limited during fall camp, so it swung back towards a Davis Warren, Alex Orji back and forth. Alex Orji, and Kirk Campbell said this, the offensive coordinator for Michigan, said this on a podcast over at the Wolverines. So again, JD1, $1 for your first month, get all the access to their content over there. He said, Alex Orji is one of our best 11 players offensively. He will have a role. And so you hear that, and you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've seen him touch the football a few times and get jiggy with it. Yeah, he's a guy that probably needs to have the football in his hands. No way around it. However, you start to unpack that statement a little bit more, and maybe this wasn't what Kirk Campbell meant, but part of me is well, why do you qualify that? Why do you qualify that he's one of your best 11? Why not just say, yeah, he's a really good quarterback. He's probably going to be a guy for us. To me, qualifying that he's going to have a role in some way, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but in some way makes me think that Davis Warren, or maybe it's a Jack Tuttle, is going to be the guy for him at some point in time. Again, Davis Warren is potentially the best pure passer. The Jack Tuttle momentum from the summer, with him being limited right now, seems to have tailed off a bit. If I have to, deciphering, again, I'll say this again about Michigan. We said at the top of the show, deciphering what Michigan needs in 2024 at the quarterback position, I think is dictated by who do you need to get the football to. Do you feel like Tyler Morris needs to touch the ball 8 to 10 times a game? If you do, then you go with someone who's a little bit more of a pocket passer. If you feel like, hey, we can get it to him 4 or 5 times, maybe you get Samaj Morgan a touch here, a touch there, and if that's the case, then we're probably going to double down on the run game, be a little bit more diverse in how we call that, and then call it for Alex Orji in the read option, the quarterback design runs, whatever. There's a very good chance, I believe, that you will see a dual quarterback system for the first part of the year for Michigan. I think in a perfect world, you'd have one guy, and maybe that's the ultimate goal for them in November. But I'm just saying, I think it would make a lot of sense with how they talk about Alex Orji. And honestly, the buzz, it seems like, around this Michigan wide receiver room, which seems to have grown a little bit since the spring, I could see them going a 2-quarterback system for the first few games. That game against Texas, you'd love to have somebody elevate and be the guy, but remains to be seen. So, overall, Michigan, they hear all the talk. They do. And I'm very curious to see how that documentary impacts the chip on their shoulder. I think it'll be a very pro-Michigan documentary. The reason why I feel that way is because Connor Stalions is sitting for it. And I think Connor Stalions lives and breathes Michigan football, regardless if he's on that staff or not. He wouldn't do anything, I believe, to negatively impact that football program. So I don't think that's what the doc will be. But just saying, the more external noise grows around Michigan, like that game week 2 against Texas, if they drop that one and everyone just leaves them for dead, forget about Michigan, they're not who they used to be. We saw that happen to Bama too, fittingly against Texas actually. And then they went on a tear. So I'm not saying Michigan's last year's Alabama, but I am saying Jesse Simonton has him in his playoff, and I think that he's onto something. So that's the latest out of Michigan. But as always, we'll keep you up to date with all things going on out there at the Wolverine and in Ann Arbor. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.